Welcome, everybody, to another Increase class. I'm Blake Anderson, and I'm just thrilled to be with you here, whether you're watching live on March 15th, 2023, or you're watching the recording on YouTube. God bless you, and thanks for joining me. We're moving into some topics that just really light my fire, things that I'm super excited about, and probably what gets into where my expertise and core competency really lie, and that's in leadership. And so I hope that you've been following along and watching all the classes. We've been having classes since December, and they've kind of been building on each other. We're talking about increase. These are spiritual principles that we apply to get natural results. And we've been building through these concepts of increase that kind of work together like bricks in a foundation. Some are next to each other, some are on top of each other. But ultimately, they've continued to build to today in this concept of leadership. So much of the first classes were about personal leadership and how you lead yourself and become personally effective to really step into true leadership. And now, starting the last couple of weeks and definitely going forward, we're going to start really digging in and empowering ourselves as strong leaders. So tonight is going to be the first of 4 weeks on this concept of leadership. I like to call it the Biblical Leadership Blueprint. And I learned the Biblical Leadership Blueprint from a mentor of mine named Tom Capps. Tom wrote this book, Pray and Plan. And he was a mentor of mine. He taught me this concept, and he described this verse of the Bible as the best biblical verse on leadership. And when he taught it to me, it brought so much together and really explained all that I had learned up to that point, and then continued to empower me as a leader going forward. So I really hope that you'll take notes, that you'll dig in to this week and the next 3 weeks as we really build and unpack the Biblical Leadership Blueprint. And I really believe that if you can implement this into your life and into the way that you work and go about your life, that you're going to be in the increase. You're going to become a leader that you weren't before, and you're going to be able to begin to see results in your life, especially as you interact with other people. So again, this is the Biblical Leadership Blueprint, step number 1, and then it's build up. And we're talking about people. So where do we get this from? So if Tom Capps, Blake Anderson's mentor, says he's found the verse in the Bible that best identifies a leadership blueprint, where do we find that? Well, turn in your Bibles. I hope you have your Bible with me. It's also in the class notes that are in the chats. But turn with me to Isaiah 57:14, Isaiah 57:14. And maybe you're watching this class and you don't own a Bible and you're not a Christian. But this is true. And this can be applied everywhere. And I think if you'll follow with me, you'll realize that even on modern day leadership books are just now figuring out what's been written in the Bible. And so we turn to Isaiah chapter 57, verse 14. And you have to know Isaiah was a prophet. He spoke on behalf of the Lord. He heard from God, and he gave messages to the people that they might be corrected and empowered and have prosperous lives. And so Isaiah 57:14 says, "And it will be said, build up, prepare the road, remove the obstacles out of the way of my people." Let me read that again. Build up, prepare the road, remove the obstacles out of the way of my people. So what we see is a blueprint. This is a step-by-step leadership blueprint. And we're going to take each one of these 1 week at a time. And so the first one is build up. So it takes quite a bit of prayer, study, and revelation. And I had a mentor teach this to me to really understand and how to apply this in leadership. But if you've been a leader, if you've worked with people, if you've tried to accomplish things, you'll see how this is so appropriate to effective leadership. So you might be looking, it's like, Blake, we have build up twice. Is he just repeating the first thing? Well, in this model I'm going to teach you, we are building up, but we're building up 2 different things. And so the first thing that you've got to build up as a leader, no matter what situation that you get into, the first thing as a leader that you're going to do is you're going to build up the people around you. So hopefully you watched last week's class. In last week's class, we talked about leading where you are. You have to start where you're at. You lead where you are. You may find yourself without a leadership title. You may be at the bottom of your corporate ladder, but you're still a leader. And so go back and watch that. But some quick review, because it's really going to push us into tonight. Understand that leadership is essential to increase. If you're going to do anything great in your life, it will be with a team and it will be with other people. And so you're going to have to learn to work with others and lead others to be able to accomplish anything great. And if you're going to study any one particular topic in 2023 to add increase in your life, the topic I'd say to study is leadership. Because the more people that you can bring on your team and you can interact with, the bigger your vision can get, the more potential that is at your fingertips and more that can be accomplished. So leadership's essential to increase. Understand that everyone can be a leader when you learn to lead where you're at. You don't have to be the CEO. You don't have to be the manager or the boss to be a leader. Everyone is a leader when they learn to lead where they are. Now, how is that possible, Blake? I don't understand. I don't feel like I've been given any real authority or responsibility. Well, I like what John C. Maxwell said in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And if you remember from last week, this is one of the top leadership books, must be in your library. But in there, in the law of influence, Maxwell says the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if you have influence over someone else and any trust built with someone else, then you're a leader and you have the potential to lead that person, right? The other thing we have to understand about influence is if you don't have influence, you will never be able to lead others. That's John C. Maxwell again. If you don't have influence, you'll never be able to lead others. There's, as we talked about last week, lots of people with the title of leader who have zero influence. But the real leader in a staff is not the one with the title of leader. It's the one that has the influence with the people that he or she works with. Okay. So growing in your influence in people is growing in leadership. And we're going to really press into that tonight about growing into influence with others. So what you have to understand when you're working with people and you're trying to do big projects and you want people to join your team, when it comes to people, fast is slow and slow is fast. I want to repeat that again. Fast is slow and slow is fast when it comes to people and when it comes to people making change. See, oftentimes you as a leader, you're trying to rally the troops. You're trying to get people on board of your vision to advance your goal. But if you go too fast, then it will eventually slow down. See, oftentimes when we have the vision and we know where we're trying to go, we've thought about this for hours, for days, for months, for years, and we assume that we can explain it one time and everyone around us will get it and will be ready to go where we are, that they trust us enough to do whatever we say. But that's not how it works with people. You see, it takes time to build influence. It takes time to build trust. And if you try to advance a cause faster than you actually have the influence or trust, then it will falter and it will never get off the ground. So again, if you try to be fast with people, it will be slow towards your goal. But if you take the time to be slow with people in the beginning, you'll build the momentum and the trust that it takes to be able to move fast together. Now, it's really important that we had to establish that first, because the rest of the steps tonight that you see behind me are going to empower you to be able to work with people, to build influence with people, to get trust from people. But you have to understand that when it comes to people, if you try to act fast, you're going to be slow to get there. If you'll take your time and you have patience and you're slow with people, it actually will be fast to get where you're going. So I've broken down this step one of building up people into 3 steps. They sound kind of similar by the words, but they're not. And we're going to really dig into them and dig into the importance of each of them. I hope everyone that's watching this fancies themselves as a leader or aspires to be one. But certainly everyone watching this probably can relate to having a bad leader and also having good leaders. And so I want you to be thinking when I'm telling you, when we're going through these different steps, about the leaders that you've experienced, the people who've been in your life, who've been strong leaders and been a good leader that you liked working with. And also, I want you to take time to think about the people that have been bad leaders. Not because we want to criticize them, but we want to be really honest about how it felt as a follower, so that when you're a leader, your followers don't feel the way you did when you had a bad leader. Okay. All right. So step number one, and these are in a very particular order. So when you are working with people, whether you're working with them day to day or you're just interacting with them in an individual moment, you must do these things in order, because remember, fast is slow, slow is fast. If I skip these steps and try to go too fast, it will slow me down, because it takes these steps in this order to build that trust that you need to get people to join your vision and join your team. All right. The first thing you've got to do when you're leading others is you've got to empathize with them. Okay. What do I mean? Well, you heard that old adage we brought up multiple times. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You've got to take time to empathize with people. You first have to connect with them on their level. You've got to be able to care for them. When they sense that you care for them, then they will start listening to you and want to hear what you have to say, right? So you're going to have to take the time to get down on the level of the people you're leading. Never can you let pride get in the way of you accomplishing your goal. The leaders who are going to accomplish their goals are determined to get there, but they're humble enough to be able to lead people well. And the first thing you've got to do is you've got to get down on their level. You've also got to speak their language. So you might be interacting with someone who's having a bad day, or maybe is not very enthusiastic about your project. And so if you race off into your vision and that seems to be all about you, they're likely not going to care enough to listen and follow you into it, right? But if you take the time to acknowledge them, acknowledge where they're at, maybe acknowledge that they're having a bad day, give them a moment or an opportunity to kind of vent or kind of talk about what's really going on in their lives. Oftentimes when someone's having a bad day, just taking a few minutes to allow them to kind of vent or talk or process, just by that working out, they can breathe a sigh of relief and they feel, okay, I've been heard. They understand where I'm at. And now once they feel like you understand them, they're ready to hear from you. But if you haven't taken the time to get that common ground, likely when you're talking about your vision or your project, in the back of their mind, they're continuing to think about their day and all the things they have to do and maybe the struggles that they're having. So first you want to empathize with anyone that you're trying to deal with. That's why oftentimes meetings have to start with, how are you doing? Now, I'm a get to it kind of person, get to the point and let's move on. But I've realized that fast is slow. And so part of my meeting agenda when I run my team meetings is there's 10 or 15 minutes of just, how are you doing? How has your week been? Tell us about your weekend. Tell us a story, whether it be good, bad, or ugly. People need a chance to be able to feel like they are valued, that they are connected, that someone knows where they are. So first thing is you have to empathize. And when you empathize, you have to speak their language. You don't want to jump straight into your industry jargon or going right after your vision. You've got to speak their language, because you have to understand this about effective communication. Effective communication is not what you say. It is what the other person understands. Okay, let me say that again. This is super important. Effective communication is not the words you say. Effective communication is when the person understands what you're hoping that they would get out of what you're saying, that they would understand you, right? So sometimes you're going to have to speak the language. So effective leaders know how to change their language depending on who they're talking to, right? So I'm a builder by trade. I know lots of technical things about homes, about buildings, about electrical systems and HVAC and plumbing and structure. And I'm a structural framer by trade, a field trained carpenter. And I'm going to speak very differently when I'm speaking to the carpenter on site than when I'm speaking to the investor in the project. Okay. Because I've got to speak their language. I'm going to be very technical with the engineer because we're thinking about granular detail. But I've got to learn to take those details and put them into layman's terms when I'm speaking to someone, maybe on my team who works in the office, who isn't a builder by trade, but is a contributing member on the finance team or administrative team, right? So you've got to learn to speak the language with the people that you're talking, because you want your communication to be effective, which means it has to be understood. All right. Step one when you're leading people, step one, you got to empathize. Take the time. It's slow, but it will be fast. Okay. So you've empathized. You're starting to build some trust. What's step two? Step two is you encourage. When you are leading other people, do not forget to encourage. Your mind might be racing. We've got to get to the point. Time is running out. I've only got 20 more minutes. We've got to start work on this project. Don't go fast. They'll end up being slow. You empathize. Now you need to encourage the person, because we're continuing to build trust. We need to have a solid foundation of trust before they will give you influence in their life and before they will follow you. All right. So you want to start by encouraging them. How do we encourage people? I want to give you 3 things to do to encourage people. And it's not collectively exhaustive, but I think if you do these 3 things, the people you're dealing with will feel empowered and they'll feel encouraged. The first thing to encourage someone is you want to affirm their value. Okay. Affirm their value, right? And affirm their gifts, affirm their skill set. Take a moment to recognize the value that they have and what they're good at and how in their gifts and their skill set. You want them to know that they are seen. You want them to know that they are heard, and you want to know that you see them as a valuable member of your team. You might be the CEO, the big boss, the person with the vision who's advancing this. They might just be helping for a few hours a week. But if you want their buy-in, if you want them to trust you, they have got to know that you see the value that they bring to the table. Okay. So affirm their value. All right. The second thing you want to do is you want to recognize their importance. It's very similar, but you want to recognize their importance and you want to recognize their contribution. Okay. So affirming their value is affirming them as a person and everything that they personally bring to the table. And then recognize their importance is understanding that, showing them that you understand that they have an important role in the process. And maybe if you have history with that person, you want to recognize the contribution that they've made to the team or they've made to the progress of the project. Okay. So recognize their importance and their contribution. So think about this. Have you ever had a leader who was really good at that? Who took the time to recognize you and maybe recognized you publicly in a meeting and recognized you publicly so everyone could know of all the hard work you are doing? How'd that make you feel? See, a lot of us are going to work and we're doing a lot of unseen things to contribute to the greater good of the organization we work for. And I think a lot of us wonder, does anybody know all the hard work that I'm putting in here? Does anyone have a clue that I worked late last night and got up early? Does anyone value the fact that I spent 8 hours on the phone yesterday? How good does that feel when you're recognized? Okay. You want to know that because you want to know to take time to recognize other people because you want them to feel good. You want them to be excited to work for you. And if you'll take the time to recognize people, it might feel slow, but when people feel valued and recognized, they know that you see them and that they're bought in, they want to be on your team. All right. And the third thing you want to do when you encourage someone is you want to empower them with confidence. All right. Take the time to make sure that they feel empowered and that they're confident to use their gifts, they're confident to use their skill set, and that they're invited to be a member of that team. Now, I think this sounds obvious because we know how we want to feel, but you'd be amazed at how many leaders rush right past these steps. They'll complain about their boss not recognizing all their hard work and how their review didn't go very well, but they'll go to their volunteer organization or church where they lead, and they won't do the things that they want done for themselves. Okay. So think about how you want to be treated and take the time to treat others that way. So we have empathized with them, we encourage them, and then we want to equip the people that we lead. Okay. Even if you're working with some really really high-powered people, as a leader, you need to equip them so that they're working with you and they understand what the goals are. So how should we equip them? Well, there's a few things you can do. You can teach them a new skill. You can teach them a new tool or a process. Oftentimes, if you're the leader, even if you have someone joining you who is older than you and more experienced, you might need to equip them with the vision or help them really understand what their part is, or equip them with the communication system you're going to use. The other thing is, you want to, as a leader, as part of equipping people, you want to take time to ensure that they're comfortable offering, that they're comfortable with the project, right? And that they understand what's expected of them. Very often leaders will just fire off an email and say, hey, do this for me. And you're kind of sitting with this email like, okay, I think I know what he wants me to do. And you may not feel equipped, and you don't necessarily know if you have the confidence to do it right. And what's worse than getting done with what you're asked to do, only to be told, this isn't exactly what I wanted. Wink, wink. I know that there's some people maybe that might be watching this or on the call that have worked with me, and I've been your leader, and undoubtedly I've probably hung you out to dry. And my apologies if I have. But it's my job as a leader. It's your job as a leader to take the time, to take the extra time and the effort to make sure that the people who are working with you feel comfortable with what they're doing, and they understand fully what they're doing, right? And now that's slow, but remember, fast is slow and slow is fast. So that extra step could actually speed up the process. Okay. Another thing is, by getting down on the level of the people that you're leading and being willing to join them for some of that equipping time, then there's respect that they are that's building for you. And they're starting to see that you value them because you took the time. Okay. Now, equipping, we think, is a very positive word. And we're making sure that people have what they need to do a good job and do everything that you ask them to do. But there's the other side of equipping. The other side of the coin is, a strong leader has got to be able to confront and correct wrong behavior. Okay. Now, if you've ever had a bad boss, you maybe have worked with someone who majored in the confrontation and the correction and minored in the rest of the equipping, the teaching, and the taking time. But they're both important. It's not okay to ignore things that aren't going well. But when you're going to confront and correct wrong behavior, to be a strong leader, you've got to use tact and you've got to use grace. Okay. We have to remember that step one is build up. It's not tear down. So confrontation and correction are undoubtedly a part of leadership, and undoubtedly is an ongoing part of the leadership process. If you're doing a project and others are working with you, especially if you're the one responsible, undoubtedly there might be someone on the team who's going to do something that's not exactly right. And if you're going to have a successful project, it can't be ignored. It must be confronted. It must be corrected, but you can use tact and grace. The other side of that is, what if you don't confront someone who's doing something wrong? And you wait all the way till the end of the project to tell them this isn't right and you're fired. Like, how fair is it if you've ever been fired and you weren't told about your mistakes until the final review, right? It's the most loving thing we can do as leaders, is to be willing to confront things that aren't going well and to lovingly correct them, and then equip our people. So it's a part of equipping, right? We're constantly reviewing our results. We're constantly reviewing the actions and activity of our team. And strong leaders do both. Strong leaders know how to be positive and encouraging and empowering, and positive leaders also know how to address things that aren't going well. But you've got to do it with tact and grace, because remember, we want people to feel empowered with confidence. We want them to be empowered. We want them to have confidence in what they're doing. And so if you don't confront and correct, then they could lose confidence because you waited till the end rather than giving them the course corrections they need. And at the same time, if you do that in a very negative way, then you can disempower someone and you can erode their confidence in what they have to offer. So just keep in mind, if you have a moment where you have to confront someone and you have to correct them, unless they're getting fired, if you're trying to keep them on your team, or you feel like you owe it to them to give them this correction and give them the ability to correct themselves, then you must take those moments very seriously. It's not okay to just flippantly throw corrections out all the time. And it's not okay to do it publicly to humiliate other people. And it's really poor leadership. And your project is likely not to get very far if that's your leadership style, which is what makes this step-by-step process even more important. If you have a meeting where you're going to have to confront someone, or you're going to have to correct them, and you want them to stay committed to your team, then you better make sure that when that meeting starts, you start by empathizing where they're at. You take the time to encourage who they are and what they bring to the table. And then from that context of empathy and encouragement and this belief that they can get there, then you confront and correct. Because if you go the fast way, it'll be the slow way. If you jump straight into correction, they sit down, you immediately tell them what they've done wrong. Likely you'll get someone who'll get real defensive really fast. They'll feel really disempowered. They'll feel undervalued, and they'll start to question how much they even want to work on your team anymore. And then everything is slowed down. Because as a leader, we've got to be committed to the goal. We've got to be committed to the vision. And the only way that we're going to get there is if everybody on our team is fully functioning in their role. So correction and confrontation is going to be part of it, but we've got to do it in an empowering way. We've got to do it in an equipping way. So when we're confronting something that's not going well, that doesn't necessarily mean a fight. And when we correct something they're not doing well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person. It just means we've got to agree that this behavior is not advancing the goal downfield. And hopefully you're strong enough as a leader to give them the chance to really talk through it, where they feel valued, they feel heard. And then you're starting to strategize, where's the missing link? What I found in organizations, a lot of people who aren't doing the right things aren't misbehaving intentionally. There's just a lack of understanding. There's a breakdown in communication somewhere. And then as a leader, you've got to own that, because maybe your communication wasn't so effective. Maybe you did lots of talking, but there wasn't enough understanding for anyone to really know what was expected of them. So you as a leader have got to be humbled enough to hear their side of the story and maybe own your side of the street. Own up to where maybe you didn't do a good enough job empowering them or equipping them, or maybe the things that you wanted them to do wasn't clear. Doesn't mean there's not correction and confrontation, but the solution isn't always that your follower bears the brunt. Sometimes I go into a meeting where there's a situation that's got to be corrected, and you know what the result is? The result is, I'm sorry, I've failed you as a leader. I didn't empower you with what you needed. I assumed something that wasn't true, and that's on me. And here's what I'm going to do to rectify the situation. I'm going to take the time to get this thing straight and empower you where you feel like you have the confidence to be a contributing member of the team because you are valued, right? So that's what strong leadership looks like. Strong leadership knows that the first step is we've got to build up our people. The strong leader understands that the most valuable resource at his or her disposal is the team. The wealthiest part of your system is the knowledge base and the energy and the skill set of the people on your team, and you must treasure them like a prized possession. And understand that their trust and their respect and their influence is a fragile, priceless thing. And if you'll start to interact with people that you work with in this way, with empathy, with encouragement, and with equipment, and though it may take time, you're going to start building influence, which means you're going to start becoming a leader in the eyes of those around you. And then your effectiveness is going to continue to grow and increase. And then so much more will be possible for you. So I hope you took notes. Remember, the class notes will be in the chats and in the descriptions. You can download them and review this. And I hope you join me next week. We're going to dig into Isaiah 57:14 again, which says, build up, prepare the road, remove the obstacles out of the way of my people. And we're going to be talking about step number 2, which is build up the process.